Today I want to tell you that leaders must know when it's time to train. Let's talk about it. What's going on, Closer to God Ministries? Welcome back to another episode. Today is going to be spirit-filled. Today is going to be righteous. I hope to get you closer to the truth, closer to the kingdom, and closer to God's will. Man, leaders must recognize when it's time to train. I'm going to talk a little bit about my knowledge of this in a worldly aspect, and then I'm going to tie it back into a biblical aspect so everybody can comprehend it. Because, like I said in the beginning, I'm trying to get you closer to God's will, closer to the kingdom, closer to the truth. So, as I progressed as a leader in my career, glory be to God, I had to recognize when was a time to train, when was a time to BS, when was a time to rest. You know, I've been fortunate and blessed enough to only have to go overseas in a combat zone twice, Iraq and Afghanistan. I tell you that prior to the first time, me experiencing conflict, me experiencing a battlefield, being blown up, being shot at, I was ill prepared, and there were leaders placed above me that had authority to tell me what I needed to do in order to make it back home. So I remember sitting in the motor pool. It's around 4 p.m. Everybody's expected to be getting off at around 5. And earlier that day, we had went out to the shooting range to qualify. And everybody's sitting out there with their weapon, and you have a junior leader at the lowest level come by and say, hey, I know you guys are sitting out here waiting to go home, but you guys aren't going home until you clean your weapon. And then those who have cleaned their weapon and turned it in, you're going to help everybody else clean their weapon so they can turn it in, and then we can get out of here. That is my first initial phase of readiness, of leaders pointing out when is the time to train, when is the time to work, when is the time to rest, when is the time to socialize, to BS. So I ended up getting promoted on my first deployment to Iraq. And I remember going out with route clearance, engineers getting blown up, facing doggone gunfire and things like that. And one thing that had been reinforced to me by leaders is the reason you make sure your weapon is clean is so it's functional. If you allow your weapon, your tools, your resources to be clogged up, to be dirty, to not be operational, when it's time for you to actually use them, you're going to be ill prepared. So throughout my course of my career in the military, and as I deployed and went to different locations, I started being that leader that recognizes when is the time to train. And I would always tell my deployed soldiers, anytime we was in an office, even though it looked like garrison, we had a built-up fob around us that had everything that you may find in the stateside. I told them that we are amongst the enemy. There are people outside that gate that want to blow us up, that want us dead. So therefore, I see you guys in here on Google, on Yahoo, on YouTube, but now is the time to make sure your weapons are clean and functional, operational. As a leader, you got to be able to doggone say, hey, I know you guys, don't want me breaking up y'all frolicking, y'all playing, but we need to focus because just outside that door, just outside that gate, the enemy is waiting on us to slip. The enemy is waiting on the right opportunity for you to not be prepared. And when it comes to what God tells leaders to do in the Bible, I want you to know that it outlines how you shall prepare yourself for conflict, for evil, for demons, for the devil. But like many people, I too sat by, didn't want to train, didn't want to learn anything. I was fine with, going on in life just as I pleased, just as I desired. And then I'm sitting there shell-shocked when the enemy blows up something and it's right next to me. Next thing you know, my ears are ringing and things like that. And I'll tell you, the first time I actually got into conflict, I had a weapons malfunction. And if anybody knows anything about a weapons malfunction on a military rifle, an M4, M16, you go through sports. I was going through all the motions. That didn't fix it. What do? Doggone, try to get behind cover and try to, take my weapon apart, unfix it from the buttstock to see what's going on. But fact of the matter is, I hadn't spent any time in preparedness, in readiness, based upon what the leaders had told me to do. I had leaders that were constantly saying, hey, pull up this regulation, read this about this training so you know how to do this when faced with this scenario. I was too busy saying, well, I ain't gonna never encounter that scenario because I'm good in the moment. But preparedness is not, all about you thinking that you're not gonna be faced with certain obstacles. It's giving you some firepower to be ready for whatever it is you're gonna face that's unknown. And in scripture, if you read it, if you acknowledge it and you accept it, it tells you where your authority comes from as a leader to be able to dictate, to be able to govern and have authority over people to say, hey, now is a time of doggone praise. Now is a time of worship. Now is a time of training, because there's things going on in the world that we don't understand. There's things that the Bible talks about, the instruction book, the scripture tells us that are going to happen that most people are trying to justify with science. Science is the reason why, this pandemic hit this way. But it tells you via scripture, certain things are going to happen. And you can not acknowledge it all day. You cannot prepare yourself. But let me tell you, when evil comes, you're not going to have no notice. They're not going to send you a letter in the mail, a post-it, a flyer, or anything. But you got to be ready. And if you call yourself a leader, make sure you are prepared. Make sure your subordinates are prepared, trained appropriately. Make sure you govern the time accordingly to make sure people that count on you for leadership get the training that they need to fight the battle they're going to face. One thing I can tell you for certain, I once was the young, ignorant soldier that didn't understand what I was going to face when I got to a deployment. That was because the experience of the leaders above me was far greater than anything I had experienced. And I became the leader, through multiple experiences that had knowledge in what we needed to train on based upon doctrine, based upon scripture, of what it will take for people that follow me to actually succeed. And everybody's not going to make it back, and you must be okay with that. And I'll tell you one thing. If I'm doing God's work and I'm prepared and I go out in battle, hey, we victorious, to glory be to God. But if I'm faced with battle, I don't have my weapon clean, I don't have my gear ready, any of that, chances are most people aren't going to like that. Most people don't like to get caught with their pants down. Some of the things we're facing with in a daily basis right now, scripture tells us you're going to deal with. So go ahead and prepare yourself. Leaders, make sure you govern time accordingly for people that genuinely want to follow you, to make sure they are successful and have a feeling of confidence that they are being trained correctly. One thing as a leader, I can't tell people to clean their weapon, and every time we go to the range, with me sending the first 5 bullets down range, the first 5 shots down range, my weapons malfunctions. Therefore, I will be a hypocrite. Y'all get over there and clean your weapons. Mine jammed up. I told you guys to clean them. And then I make everybody else go through the doggone process and me not be held accountable. One thing about the authority God gives over leaders is people don't understand that leaders face a different judgment. Based upon your knowledge, based upon your experience, this is how you will be judged upon entry into the kingdom. So therefore, if I don't train my people, and then when something happened, lives are lost, I can't turn around and blame them and say, hey, they doggone knew what to do. I told them, they in basic training, they got told to doggone clean their weapon. I was supposed to reinforce that as a leader, not assume that they had been trained adequately. Something in the military that you can't do is assume people have been trained properly if you didn't train them. I don't care if I was brought up in a church, I don't care if I grew up around this type religion, X, Y, and Z. As a leader, how do I know you grew up on truth? How do I know you've been trained adequately, that no steps were skipping, no shortcuts were taken? Only way to do that is to dive into doctrine, which is the scripture, and make sure you are trained adequately. And then be accountable for your actions because I trained you. Don't forget to comment, like, subscribe. Check out the link in the description because I'm only shooting it gun barrel straight. Bow.